All right, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode here on the Lure Lab, a part of the Serious Angler Network. As always, I am your host, the captain, Andrew Full. And just a quick shout out, real fast, as everyone is listening to this. This is our 2-year anniversary this week since we started the Lure Lab and started airing episodes every Saturday morning for you guys. And Saturday evenings on the YouTube. So I want to say thank you. A huge shout out to everyone who tunes in and the audience that continues to grow on a weekly basis. Everyone that rocks. And those who are new here, just so you know, and you get a synopsis of what the Lure Lab is we are a tackle technique specific podcast to help those who want to get into bass fishing or those who are advanced at bass fishing to catch more bass and to put them on the boat, kayak, even from the bank. We have all the tips and tricks to have you covered across the entire board. So appreciate everyone who tunes in every week. But boy, do we have a dandy for you guys today. We have Kyle joining us from Throwback Baits, and we're going to talk big swim baits and fishing them in the fall and maybe what his favorite 1, 2, maybe 3 swim baits are. So let's get Kyle on here and chat about throwing bigger baits in the fall. Hey, Kyle, how's it going, man?
It's good, Andrew. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Anytime. I appreciate you being able to come on here. I always love getting swim bait guys on. We've had a couple on. We don't have too many episodes on. I think this is our 3rd, but
Awesome.
they always tend to get good reception. And guys, you know, it's an ever growing niche that's not even really a niche anymore. Everyone's
Right.
doing it. So it's I'm excited to learn from you. So yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I will do my best to see. Fall is my favorite time of year to fish. So when you asked me if I wanted to talk about fall fishing, I said absolutely.
So what makes, I'm going to come right out of the hopper here. What makes throwing big baits like swim baits in the fall so effective?
I mean, I just think I'm from Minnesota, so everything's going to be based off of what I've learned here, born and raised here. But the way our fish behave in the summer is they go deep, and if you want to fish them offshore, you can find them there. But the big fish primarily don't stage up shallow in the summer unless you're night fishing. But for the most part, I think throwing big baits in the fall, you capitalize on that bite of these fish know winter's coming. These fish know they're going to become a little more dormant. They know food resources are going to be a lot lower than they are all the time, like all year long. So when you get to that fall stage and when they really like get into that fall, I mean, we're in the transition right now. So the transition is kind of a tricky spot. But when you hit that fall, when the water temps get below that 65, 60-degree mark, the fish come up shallow. And I think they capitalize on eating as much as they can for as long as they can until the ice comes, and then it's done. So my theory is that, if you're going to get a bait in front of a bass when it's the hungriest it is all year, you might as well make it a big meal and get them to commit to it.
Do you have like a specific water temp you look for when you're like, I know that the big bait bite is going to be on? Is there a specific like water temp window you look for?
I would say below, I mean, it's got to be below 65 for sure. But if you get below 60, I'm pretty confident it's going to be turned on. So we've been out the last 2 weekends, and we're having a really warm fall,
Oh,
and water
aren't
temps
we
are
all?
like, yeah, right. Water temps are still 70 degrees here, and it's October 1st, I think, or September. Pretty close to October, and 70-degree water temps is not normal. So we're going out, and they're still in that transition where they're not pushed up shallow yet. So I would say, 60 degrees and less, it's go time.
I love that. It's such a fun time of year when that water hits 60. It's like 60 to 52, I feel like, or 52 to
Yeah,
60 is like the most fun period in the fall if
totally.
you know where to find them.
Right.
Because they're not everywhere, but when you find them, they're like loaded, and it's awesome. So I want to circle back to the beginning, right? Like,
Sure.
what inspired you to grow and start Throwback Baits, and kind of like let's walk through the timeline from the start, the inception of it to where
Mhm.
you're at now.
Okay. So I was a videographer shooting weddings primarily for about 8 years, and then COVID happened in 2020. And I have 4 kids at the time, 5 kids now, but all of a sudden had no work, and I was just like, oh crap. And I'm the sole provider for our family. So and Nicolette, my lady, had shot the weddings with me, so we were both just out of a job really quickly. Long story short, and it really wasn't. I've always loved fishing. I've been a big like Senko, jig, frog kind of guy my whole life growing up. I met Oliver Nye. I did some film work with him a few years prior to 2020, and he kind of got me interested in big baits. We were throwing them for muskies at the time, but he showed me like a Defiant and some eye slides and megabass, like the big
Yeah.
bait presence, and I got to see it in person. And then I bought my first swim bait just probably 6 months prior to 2020 and caught a fish on it and thought this is cool. Anyway, fast forward, COVID happens. No job, no work, and I don't know. I was like, I'm gonna build my own swim bait. I bought a block of wood off of Amazon. Sorry, I'm trying to see if I have the original carving here with me. It's somewhere.
It's
I
probably
bought
at
it.
home in a case.
No, it's on the shop. Oh, there it is. Here, let me grab it for you. This will make more sense.
Oh, this is gonna be sweet. I look forward to seeing this.
So I bought a $10 block of wood off of Amazon, a balsa wood, and I carved this bait with again like a $10 set of carving tools from Amazon. And I really had no direction with it. I carved it just thinking I want to make a lure. Let's see what I can do. And the way my mind kind of works, I dive into everything head first. So I couldn't just like carve it and then set it down. It consumed me for a while. So I didn't even fish the wooden version of this. I carved this and then I made my own molds out of silicone and thought if I can make molds of this, then I can replicate it with resin. So that's what I dove right into that. I got the resin stuff dialed in. So like this is the first. Okay, sorry, I'm jumping forward. Took me a couple weeks to get this figured out the resin. This was winter time. I started in the fall. By the time I had stuff ready to go, it was winter time. But this is one of the first baits I ever poured of resin. And it's very crude and very rough, clear coat that I kind of botched. But what was funny is I went to Florida about a week or two after I got this done. And I threw it in a Walmart pond and caught like a 5 pound, 8 ounce bass. And that was it. Like once
Ruined.
that happened, it was done. So I came back home and I was like, I'm going to make a page. I still had no business sense at this time. Like I didn't think I was going to make money doing this. But I made a page just kind of documenting the process of making my lures. And I came up with the name Throwback Swimbaits because I'm kind of an old soul. And that's just the style is just old school, vintage kind of throwback kind of life. I started the page and all of a sudden people are like, you're gonna sell those? You're gonna sell those? And I was like, no. I just made them to fish. Enough people started asking, and I figured out how to duplicate these ones out of resin. And I think we did our first batch. I call them the OG baits with the round eyes.
Yeah.
That's not our normal bait. We released maybe 30 of these OG ones with the round eyes, and then I ended up getting them refined from a company. And once I hired the company to refine them and make the actual Wake Walker, that's when I started taking it seriously. Like we dropped 40 baits in a month. I'm like, holy cow, these sold out in 3 minutes. And then we dropped 50 baits, and then we started introducing a new bait, and this snowball effect just started happening, and it just grew so organically that it was kind of we got to a point probably about a year after I started carving the original bait where I looked at Nicolette and I was like, I think we're gonna do this full time. I think we can make a business out of this. And we're still out of my garage at the time, but we started just selling baits and making baits, and the snowball effect is very real. And then it's always been way more demand than we've been able to produce.
Yeah.
So it's just been for the last couple of years has been playing catch up. But I don't know how far you want me to dive into this, but I've got a long story. So
No, I mean it's as far as you want to go. So I kind of like we can kind of jump some spaces, right? Because it's
yeah,
2020, 2021, COVID's going on, the world's
Mhm.
shut down.
yeah,
Kind of fast forward now, like where is Throwback Baits at now? And
yeah.
how many baits are you producing, etc.? Like how many variations? I know you
Sure.
just did a release drop yesterday of like a walking bait type flapper deal, right? I
Yeah,
don't exactly know what it was, but it looks sweet.
crawler.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the crawler, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So fast forward to now. So I have two business partners now, two of my best friends. And we've got two full-time employees and about four part-time employees. So we got a pretty big operation now. We've got a shop out of Maple Grove, Minnesota. It's like 2,700 square feet. So it's a full-time operation, and I'm transitioning from doing everything myself to delegating and being a boss, which is I mean, I shot weddings before, so I was always my own boss, and I never had anyone to take care of. So it's a
It's an
good.
interesting spot to be in.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot. I learn every day, but I really do love it. It's awesome having people like take a. I mean, we have such a wonderful staff. We call them family. I don't even call them my staff because they
Gotcha.
just are. They are through and through everything we could ask for employees, and they just believe in the culture and they want to be here. It's wonderful. So we've got a really good gig. But yeah, we're probably pushing out. I don't know, maybe close to 1,000 baits a month, maybe a little more at this point,
That's fantastic.
between retail and direct to consumer. So we're really, I'm big on the marketing aspects. So I control the Instagrams and the photos and the videos and push out ads for stuff if we need it. Keep that rolling. And then now that Doug is on board, he's like our production manager. So he takes care of all of the making sure the baits are being made. And I still help a lot with painting. And Billy, other business partner, he does a lot of the back end like CAD work, and he does a lot of the technical side because he's really technically advanced and like a super smart guy on that stuff. So he can pick up CAD like nobody's business and just learned it in the last like 3 months. So
Oh, that's
that
sweet.
has allowed us to just make new baits faster than I ever have before.
Yeah.
So
You no longer have to go to the balsa woodblock and carve them for
yeah,
months.
yeah. I carved like this is like the chickadee crawler that you saw last night. That's the
Yeah.
original carving of that. And then like the retroglide that's the original carving. But yeah, gone are the days of carving original baits. I will sometimes start with a block of wood just to see like feel something out and see where it goes from there. But now we can kind of take ideas and run with them a lot faster.
Right. Love that. So, and one thing I did notice, like just kind of perusing through your Instagram before I message you, the one thing I can um not resonate, but the one thing I love about your baits is like you stick back to like the throwback skin with all your paint jobs and stuff. They're very retro-esque. So I think it fits the name of the company
Thank you.
very well. Like that
Yeah.
one, I think it's off your back right shoulder, that lemonade color with the pink.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just love that color. Like I feel
Yeah.
like a smallmouth wherever you go is just gonna unglue on that thing.
Yeah, they do. It's such an obnoxious color, but it's just like so heavily branded in between like us and the homeless fishermen. It's just kind of like our thing now that everyone just
Yeah.
loves it. Can never make enough of those.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm sure they sell out within minutes of putting them on the website as well.
Yeah.
So it's good to have a cult following. So
Right.
let's
Yeah.
dive into why we have you on here, Kyle. And let's talking fall swim bait fishing now that we have the backstory on throwback swim baits, right?
Yeah.
So which of your custom designed swim baits would you recommend our viewers for throwing during the fall period?
We kind of have the perfect bait for it. So I have them laid out here. Obviously, this is the throwback. The cheat code is what I call it. So this bait is a shrunken version of our flagship bait, the Wake Walker, which is a wake and crank. It's 1.5 ounces. It's got kind of a coffin style lip, if you can see it like that. Which, with that being the way it is, this bait you can wake it on top, and it's got a really great like shad profile presence. This tail is like really thin silicone and it's super strong, but it throws a lot of water when it's swimming. I don't even fish this in the fall as a wake bait. I do most of the year as a wake bait, but when it comes to fall time, I have a nickname. So it's called the cheat code because it's just kind of like if you can't get bit on a big swim bait, this is what you go through because it's 5 inches. It's kind of a bite-sized snack.
Is it like a crank down then so you get it subsurface?
Yeah, so it's a wake and crank. So wake it really slow, or when you crank it down, it'll burn down about a foot or two, and it's perfect for fall because you can get it right in that zone where it's far enough for them to come up for it, but it's not too high for them to just maybe not think if the top water bite's not on, it's not on, but it's enough to get right in front of their face. And as I was saying with the coffin style lip, it it thumps just like a chatterbait does. So imagine a chatterbait and a shad profile. I call it the shatterbait sometimes. So it's got this tail. The tail is just doing this, and it's flicking, and then the end of your rod is like just vibrating. So my favorite way to throw this in the fall is literally just a burning cover bait. I'm just hitting everything, and I'm burning this as fast as I can. I want to put as much vibration as possible. I want this tail to be going crazy, and I don't know why it has never failed me. Like when the fall, like I said, that 60-degree mark hits, like I break this thing out and I do not take it off until winter comes. So that's definitely my favorite bait for the fall.
That sounds fun. And then what's the other one you have there?
The other one is this is a new one, so I haven't got to experience this in the fall yet. This is that retro glide that I showed you, the one I carved. This is the Metro glide, so it's the mini retro. So this is a 2-ounce bait. It's 7 inches long, and I'm excited to throw this in the fall because I experienced a crazy little bite in the spring, where we were burning this again, burning it so hard that it puts out vibration to your rod, and then dead stopping it. And when it stops, it would go
It would
and
go.
kind of just like a
It,
jerk bait would,
yeah.
you jerk, and then it would pause there and just barely move. That's what we were doing with this, and they were annihilating it. I mean, the smallmouth would come unhinged for this like burning pause thing. So I think,
The great smallmouth color you have there too,
yeah,
that
right.
clown.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with the clown. You can't go wrong with the clown. Anything bright. But yeah, I'm excited to fish this in the fall because I think it's another bait that you can. It's a very fast, fluid, twitchy bait. I'm a big like fall time is like just get something aggressive. The bite's always aggressive up here. So if you can get something that just like they have to turn their head and look at it, you're gonna get a bite. The
Oh,
reaction baits, you know.
yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. So, man, now you're making me want to go throw bigger baits in the fall.
You have to.
I have a hard time putting down the A rig because we have so many smallmouth and
That's fair.
Great Lakes.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would eat it. I just don't know when or where I would throw it unless I
Sure.
go east and fish like our Finger Lakes, which the famous one over here is Cayuga that
Oh
has
yeah.
ungodly size fishing, and they all have good ones.
So
So
awesome.
it's tough for me to get over there this time of year because the
Yeah.
smallmouth fishing is unreal. But when we do, we always catch big ones. I need to
Nice.
do that some more. So now we talked about that. What is like a memorable experience you have throwing these baits, and maybe like a memorable fish catch, like something
Sure.
that comes right
That's
to
it.
mind?
Okay. I'll break. So I'll rewind a little bit. So this is the cheat code, right? This is resin. We started with this. It's called the Woody. This is the exact same bait in the wood version. So these are really difficult to make. So that's why we ended up retiring this for this bait. But 2 years ago, before this bait was around, this swims the exact same. I had this Woody on. It might be the exact same one with the white tail. And we had gone. There's this chain of lakes I grew up 5 minutes away from, so I know it like the back of my hand. And we had fished it all day. We caught a lot of fish. We hadn't caught anything big, but there's one of the end of at the end of the chain. One of the lakes goes into this tiny little creek, and this creek is maybe like 30 feet wide at the most, and it's so shallow. And I had this bait on, and I threw it up, and I was like burning it in like probably this tiny little hole, and I had like this probably mid 4 smallmouth come up. It was like 18 inches, but it was like this tall, and it came up and just had the ball stuck in its face, like balled up in its face. I'm sorry, the bait was balled up in this thing's face, and I pulled it out, and it was the fattest. It had just been chewing on like just crawdads, I'd imagine, but it was the fattest, shortest smallmouth I've ever seen in my life, and that was like the moment that I was like, okay, we need to take this and make it into a resin version, and just make the hell out of them because it just the way it hit it and the way that bait looked in that fish's mouth. It was one of those moments where you're like, dude, we're onto something. I
Yeah.
felt
Now
really
my question is, and that I'm not saying you can refuse to answer this, but how much different is the action and swimming style from the original wood carved one to the resin bait, or is it
it's
like
so
identical?
it's so similar. You really couldn't. I mean, it's actually the exact same lip. So they have the same lips. Which, when it
Okay.
comes to building bait, this is a little bit wider, but it's the same style lip. It's really close to being the same exact size. This is a little thicker, which is funny because it puts out a little more thump than this does. But overall, I don't think it would be something enough to where if you had a bite on this that you were hot on, I don't think they would even change their mind at this.
Fair enough. I just
Yeah.
had to ask. I was like,
Yeah.
because I know sometimes when you go from resin or plastic to wood, like it kind of changes the action, or
Yeah.
it might sink a little bit faster or float a
Yeah.
little quicker.
Yeah,
So
there is. It's funny because I was curious about that as we changed it. But there's really only one bait that we refuse to make resin, and it's the Bad Bunny. These are wood for a reason. It's
yeah,
like
the
that's why.
noise.
The noise. I mean, other than that, wood offers you buoyancy, but there's so much buoyancy that you can pack into resin that you really don't need wood unless you need a noise, you know. That's my thoughts. There's so many people that think it's like if you use cedar baits, and there's a theory in swim baiting that if you use a cedar bait and you rash through the clear coat and the cedar leaks out, that like fish enjoy the scent of cedar. I have no idea if that's true or not. So rabbit hole down that one.
Interesting point. We'll let the scientists decide on that one, right? So
I don't know if I believe
that's we should call Berkeley in their fish lab
Right.
or whatever they have and see if
Right.
they put cedar scent to the test.
Yeah, see which one's put a bunch of chunks of wood and see which one's the Basco sniff or something. I don't know.
Who knows? But so when it comes to the fall time of year, like how do you choose which color pattern to key on and throw?
Good call. I fish primarily like dirty water. A lot of it's just like dirty, shallow water. It's just what we've got here. And like I said, like you can't go wrong with these bright colors. I'm a big bright color guy. I'm not like, I mean, being a painter of baits myself, like the most fish I catch on any of my baits are resin white baits. Like I just think to some extent, I mean, granted, like this is my experiences with Minnesota, and we have like the easiest fishery in the world for mid-sized fish. Like it's fun here. But there's an aspect of like if you have a bait that has a great action and you know the time of year and you know the spots, like the color doesn't matter so much. That being said, if I do just want to have an upper advantage, like I'm a big bluegill fan like that. Just like nice bluegill, normal patterns on the brighter side. But when it comes to fall, I always have bright tails. I think the tail is just something that you can't go wrong with having a bright tail. For example, I had this bait on when I caught that fish that one day, and the white tail was key. I caught my PB on this bait in Florida too with the white tail, and my buddy was throwing the exact same bait with a black tail, and it just looks different in the water. And he didn't get as many bites. I'm not saying that's why, but I'm a believer in bright tails and pretty bright colors in the fall.
Well, it's a contrast deal too, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're in, and that could be in Minnesota, do a lot of your waters run like slightly more tannic, like that clay red color, or are they real clear? Or
If you get up northern, farther of me, yes, they're very like rusty water.
yeah,
And that being said, I do like throwing darker colors up there, like craws, like reds or blacks or browns, which is funny because the water's like that. But when you look at the water, like you hold the water in your hands, it's pretty clear. It's just how deep it is. Is like it looks a little darker. But yeah, I fish like green, slimy, kind of like pea stained lakes. So like the bright colors just have never done me wrong.
Like that. Yeah, that sounds like every other state, and like right along that was it latitude line, right? Like it just seems like wherever they kill grass and you get algae blooms from it, it's brighter, sometimes better, or the complete opposite, goes dark as you can. So
Right.
I like bright baits as well. Like I have a hard time not, if I'm throwing like a green pumpkin or a black chatterbait style bait, I have a hard time not dipping that tail chartreuse or throwing something with the chartreuse tail. One, contrast, and two, every bluegill you look at in the water always has a bright tail. So
exactly,
it just makes sense.
Yeah, but if you switch over to nighttime, I will go fully dark. I'm like nighttime, you want, you've got the silhouette of the night. They're looking up at top water baits. Like you want a dark, contrasty bait. Pretty much only throw black baits at night. It just seems to be the way.
Do you ever throw black baits during the day?
I do not. I really don't. Unless it's awake. Like, and I think too, like awake in dirty water. If it's on top, like a black one might have a little more contrast. But yeah, like I said, I'm not a crazy color guy. But I guess maybe it's just the year I've been leaning. We released the pink lemonade like this year, so I've been throwing the crap out of this thing. It's just like everything eats it for some reason.
That color's just wild. It's got to be the way that they see it in the water, because I know chartreuse tends to turn white, specifically to smallmouth. So I wonder if pink is somewhere along those same lines, and it just looks like a shad to them.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Someone posted a photo of this exact bait on a page the other day, and they put that filter on that. There's a bass filter that shows you what bass see.
Yeah.
And we had like 3 really nice shad painted baits, and all of them were like gray, and like this one and this one. All they could see was the pink and then the bright red head. Like that's what they could see. Everything else was like muted. So it was funny.
Oh, it's kind of crazy. It's crazy to think to us like, oh, this color's so bright, and then a bass looks at it and they're like, I don't know what that is at all, but I'm gonna eat it.
Right.
So I mean, I kind of want to dive into setups now. Like, what would be a recommended setup, and maybe even your personal setup for
Mhm.
somebody that's a beginner all the way to a swim bait enthusiast? So maybe two different setups for that beginner class that wants to get into it, and
Sure.
then a setup that you recommend for the swim bait enthusiast that you may personally throw.
Yeah. If we're basing it off of this bait, like this is
Yeah.
the reason we made this bait is to be able to throw on literally anything. So like I've had kids, my own kids, like nieces and nephews, throwing this on like a $25 ugly stick setup that they got from Walmart. And the nice part is like you can throw it on anything. It doesn't really change the action. Like you're not gonna feel it quite as well. But the night, like it's an ounce and a half. Like even if your rod's not rated to that, like it's so light that you can throw it on anything. That being said, if you moved up a stage and you know you're a beginner fisherman, but you're an adult and you can afford something, I would just go with like a maybe like a mid 7 foot crankbait rod. I think a glass rod of this. Just because you know when you reel a crankbait rod, you just get that vibration. You can feel it. It's very sensitive. Like this would be a great option for that because knowing it's very. I mean, there's treble hooks on this, so when you get hung up on grass, if you're reeling something that doesn't have a lot of feel to it, and you don't know if it's vibrating or not in the end, and you're hung up on grass and you waste a cast just reeling it slow. Like I refit us. Sorry. So yeah, I would say crankbait rod for this. A glass rod would be pretty ideal. You could really throw it like again, you can throw it on anything, but if we're getting into technical stuff, that would be my recommendation. If you're a swim bait guy, I throw it on a Leviathan Omega finesse rod. And the cool thing about the finesse rod is it's got like the backbone of like your middle of the road swim bait rod does. So it's got a lot of like load up in it, and the front like foot of that rod is so sensitive that you get it's like a crankbait rod meets a swim bait rod. So it's a
Hmm.
7 foot 11 foot rod. Sorry, 7 foot 11 inch rod. It's got like the backbone of a swim bait rod, and then it's got that perfect little tip just to like so I can burn this round all day, and I can feel this thing thumping on the end of my rod, and then as soon as I load up into that big smallie again, hopefully it's there this fall. Like it keeps it pinned.
Yeah.
That's the thing with treble hooks. Like you need a rod that loads up a lot so that when it jumps or when it turns, it keeps it pinned. Like you want that give in the rod so that the trebles don't get pulled out immediately. Because a lot of times they're just holding on by or 1 or 2 points. And if you've got something that is like stout and only it doesn't load up to the base of your rod, it's not parabolic. One turn of that bass and it could just pop right out because it's too much. You're pulling too hard. So you've got the load in your rod. I think it's perfect setup for that. And the same thing with this. Like these are, I mean, two trebles on this, but they're pretty small trebles, so you don't want a lot of give with your rod on these. So fishing something on the lighter end, like a 2 to 4 ounce rated rod for this, and then a 1 to 2 ounce or a half ounce to 2 ounce rated rod for this is going to be the sweet spot.
Love that. And then what was that? It was a Megabass Leviathan. What rod is it again?
That
Sorry.
was no, it's a Leviathan is the swim bait company,
Oh,
Leviathan
got it.
rods.
Yeah. See,
Yep.
now I'm a dummy. Now I know that
You're good.
because
Yeah. They're kind of like one of
Megabass
the
has one that's close. It's like Levant, right? The
Levante,
Levante.
yeah. They also
Yeah,
have a
sorry.
Leviathan rod too, so it's very
Yeah,
confusing. But yeah, it was an Omega Finesse is what it's called.
love that. I
Yep.
thought I had a rope. I was like, that doesn't sound like a Megabass. But I was like, oh wait. And as soon as you said, I was like, oh, Leviathan. They actually have their own rod company
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, you're
That's
good.
awesome.
Good.
Got it. And then
And I
what reel
believe
would you use?
Dobbins has a sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I believe Dobbins has a rod similar to the Omega Finesse that's like in
It's
the
like a
same range.
906 CB Fury, right? I think is what
Something
it
like
is.
that. Yeah, something like that. I saw one the other day and I was like, oh, this is a good set. And like the Omega Finesses are on the high end of price, but if you're just starting out and you get, you know, that the whatever the lightest rating of the Dobbins rod is, the Fury lineup, it's
Yeah.
perfect for these.
Yeah. I think it's a 906. I could be wrong. And that
Something like
Dobbins
that.
had some weird,
I
just
never know
like
how the
Loomis.
numbers work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what reel would you use? Is it like a Shimano Tranx maybe or something along those lines? Is
Um,
that your favorite line?
yeah, my setup, I'm kind of a snob. I like nice like higher end Japanese reels. I've got a Conquest and I've got a Ryoga for my bigger setups. But the Conquest 200 is kind of my go-to for like those rod setups. And then I'm running for both of these. I'm running usually 14 to 17 pound fluoro.
Okay.
So I like
Now
FC
why
Sniper a lot.
Why fluoro over mono? Like a lot of guys want big, like trilene big game, right? Or like some
Yeah.
type of mono. Why do you choose fluoro over mono?
So it's funny. I went from I've always been a braid guy, and then when I got into swim baits, I transitioned just right to fluoro. I never even dipped my toes in the mono, but I do like fluoro a lot. It has just the right amount of stretch to me. You know, it got a little give to it, but you get the mono, and it's like, right?
Yeah.
It's got a big stretch to it. Fluoro is like it seems to have the sensitivity. It seems to have just the right amount of stretch, and then it seems to have the FC Sniper just seems pretty bulletproof to me. Like I rarely break off on fish, unless there's like a nick in the line, I don't catch it. But I've just had great experience with the FC Sniper and the fluoro. So, granted, too, it does sink. So a lot of these baits, like in the fall, like I want to get this down. Like I'm gonna take every advantage I can and use fluoro because it's
Yeah.
sinking, so it's not that. And these will sit really high in the water column too. So like I'm gonna take every advantage I can and not. Run the mono to I don't want it to head up or anything like that. So fluoro has just been like what we've learned to love and what we've gone with, and it just once you go down that hole, I'm like I'm there. So I have no
Fair enough.
reason to
Yeah,
turn
I'm a
back.
big fluoro guy as well.
Yeah.
Now, when you're tying the swim bait to your line, right? Do you tie direct or do you use like a snap swivel or an what is it? I can't even think of what it's called right now. Like the
Split
O
ring.
ring. Yeah,
Yeah.
split ring. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty lazy. Just to be honest. I use like the decoy egg snaps. I use a size 2 for this little one or a size 3 for this one. If not, you can run a split ring on it, but a lot of times you can tie direct. It really doesn't. The action on the wake baits will change a little bit without having a snap. I recommend a snap on anything that's waking or cranking. With the glide, it's not a bad idea to tie direct just so you get a little more sensitivity and there's not extra weight hanging up here
Yeah.
because these are really sensitive to weight this way. Whereas these, you want the head to really be freed up as much as possible. So snaps and split rings for sure on wake baits. Glides, I would tie direct.
I'm writing notes here. Snaps or
Yeah,
split.
you're good.
Now, do you ever try like a loop knot? Like when
I,
tying it on, or do you not trust the strength of a loop knot?
If I knew how to tie one, I would tell you. I've never.
There's a super easy one. Actually, if you have bought Rapalas back in the day, alpaca, they had that loop knot on the back.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's the loop knot I use for
Oh,
like
same.
shaking a minnow, even throwing like I have some of the Spro KGB Chad
Sure,
shads, right? Like,
sure.
and like I don't know what size snaps to buy or
Yeah.
what swivel I want to put on there, so I just tie that loop knot because I use it for spay fishing for steelhead, and I'm like, if a 15-pound steelhead's not going to break my 12-pound mono as he's screaming 100 yards of line, I think I trust to throw a more expensive bait on
Fair.
this loop knot. So you
Fair.
can keep it real small so it doesn't rotate and get all wrapped
Nice.
up in your line as well.
Yeah, I don't see why that wouldn't work. That sounds like a pretty solid idea if you don't want to buy the snaps.
And it takes about 30 seconds to tie. So instead of trying to find what sizes you want.
Yeah.
So let's keep moving forward here because we're running way past the time I said it would take to do. So I apologize on that. No, you are good. So thanks for answering that one. But so where would you determine, like, you go out on the body of water in a day and you're like, I'm only throwing swim baits, and this is for our viewers, right? Like, where would you determine is the best place to go and throw bigger swim baits like the crank down or the glide bait in the fall time?
Sure. I would immediately go to shallow flats. Anything that holds cover still, because a lot of our weeds die off right at the beginning of fall or the end of summer. Anything that still has some sort of cover for them to sit in an ambush stock, because I think they're ambush hunting in the fall. They're just moving around. They're looking for that thing to come flying past their face, but they're not going to do it in the wide open. They're still smart. You get these big fish that aren't dumb. So I'll fish a lot of stuff that's got like submerged vegetation, 3 to 4 feet of water, and there's got 2 feet of weeds, just burning stuff over the top of them. If you can like nick the weeds when you're coming through it, you're good.
Money.
Yeah.
Love it. So we talked about the key action and stuff that they already do. Is there a modification that you wouldn't mind telling us if you have one that you do to the baits to try to entice these fish to bite them more in the fall?
Not really. The beneficial part of fishing our own baits is that we kind of set them up. They're fully modded stock. So everything I wanted to do for these and everything that we wanted to do for every bait we make is in the bait. The one thing I would say is back to this is like if this has a dark tail in it, I would pull this out. I would clean out that slot and I would put a bright tail in it. That would be the main thing I would do.
And those tails, you can just remove them and replace them, put them in however you
Yeah,
want.
they're glued in so they don't go anywhere, but just take a razor blade and clean it out and put a new one in there. I have seen it's funny you say that. That's a good point. I have seen people put the I think they're decoy hooks that have flash blades on the bottom of them.
Yeah.
And they do that in the fall because that can be something that just, is a little
Extra
upper edge.
enticing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that might be one.
Love that. So now as we kind of wrap it up here, right? Just a couple more questions for you. You're probably looking at designing new baits here in the future and adding more to the throwback swim bait lineup. Like, are there any cool trends you see that you've seen kind of happening in the swim bait industry that has you excited with creating new baits into the future?
Yeah, we're definitely little trendy thing right now is soft glides, which you saw it with,
Like
saw
Glowworks Design and
Grow Design
Berkeley. Yeah.
Works. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Shout out to Grow Design Works for that one. That was they like that. That's like the flagship of soft glides. But we're
Well,
working on
it's called
something
the
with them.
flagship, right? So
Yeah. See?
good play on words.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, we're definitely going to lean into that one and give our little spin on that that aspect because I think there's a bite that me and Marshall, the homeless fisherman, have discussed a couple times that he's like, man, if you can get a bait so I can fish it here. Like we're going to catch some big fish. So that's something we're working on right now. And then we've got a handful of other big projects coming up in early next spring. So I can't talk about those ones just quite yet, but we're getting really close to releasing that and diving into it. That'll get us into a whole new category of business and fishing. So I'm really excited.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So everyone stay tuned to the announcements. So like Throwback Baits, right? And we're gonna have his social media and website down below in the description. So if you've never seen his Instagram page or Facebook or the website, I encourage you to go check it out. Some of the baits just look absolutely awesome. So
Thank you.
yeah, of course. So final question as we wrap up here. I want to know because I'm sure you get a lot of emails and DMs about like common mistakes and questions from people purchasing your bait. So I want to know maybe one or two of the common one, like extremely common ones you get. And then what is your advice to those clients and customers to capitalize and learn from those mistakes to catch more bass on your baits?
Yeah. The main thing this is a broad answer to this. I'll keep it quick, but a lot of people will take the bait out and they'll swim it one time and then they'll send me a message and say, I don't think it's swimming right, or it's not doing this. It's not doing this. My recommendation for anyone fishing, not even our swim baits, any swim bait ever, is you take this bait out, fish it for an entire day. I'm talking like, and if you're fishing for 2 hours, fish it for 3 days. Give yourselves 8 hours on this lure because you will learn so much more about fishing, how your fish respond, and how that bait is meant to be like it's designed to swim versus just throwing it out. Because it can be something as simple as throwing this bait on too heavy of a setup can completely changes the action. If you overdo this bait, it's not great. If you throw this on a lighter setup with 14-pound fluoro, it will change your world and you'll get more bites than you've ever had. So like the biggest takeaway from every message and anything I've ever done throwback wise is learn a bait before you count it out.
Mhm. Yeah, I think we're all guilty of that, right?
I
Yeah,
am.
because I'm a creature of habit. So like all my
Yeah.
flipping sticks have 20 pounds.
Uh-huh.
That's that. When I'm throwing bigger baits, I'm like
Yeah.
20-pound fluorocarbon.
Yeah.
And I'm an alpha angler guy, so I have their Y Glide, which is an S glass swim bait rod. So it's got that
Sure.
deep parabolic bend to it. The guy from
Yeah.
Clutch, we did an episode with him. It's his favorite glide bait rod he's ever thrown.
Awesome. Yeah, Josh is a good dude.
Yeah, so it's very universal from like 1 ounce all the way to like 6.
Crazy.
But it's not the best for everything, but it's really good for a lot of things.
Sure.
So and I've like experimented like some of the glides I have is I have the Megabass one, I got G Rats, I have the Spro KGBs, I got a
Nice.
couple Scottsboro ones, the
Nice.
bluegill ones because I like
Yeah.
those a lot, and I've caught
Good.
quite a few fish on those. And then I had some fish everythings in a Tado but I sold them because I was like, I don't want to throw these yet. So I sold them. But I mean, every bait, that's one thing I've learned just throwing them for like an hour is like every one of them needs a very specific reel cadence, twitching of the rod, needs specific line. I found myself downsizing to 17-pound test because you get more action. So yeah, I think that advice is paramount to anyone who's getting into the game or is in the game. Is like, it takes so much time, and there's no limit on time, but we're very limited with time, right? So like it's hard to fully entrust and develop skills to throw like one bait that we just always circle back to what we know. And if we took time, say 2 hours to throw a bait, there's so much more we can learn. And I personally challenge everyone to take your words of advice and challenge themselves.
I mean, there's 107-inch glide baits right in this category. And if you like one of them and you get this and it shouldn't do the same thing as your other glide. Like every glide has such a personality to it. And if it took us 2 years to design this, it should take you longer than a day to learn it, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that. So there's reasons why it took so long to get it to that specifications that you wanted to fill. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the glide bait and swim bait market is that every little bait seems to have like this perfect little niche that it works in. You just have to learn it, and it takes time.
Yeah. Oh, super quick. I know we're running behind, but this is a good transition from that. This bait, we took it to the Boundary Waters, which is this northern place north of us in Minnesota, and I fished it pretty much the whole day. How I traditionally fish glide baits, slow and twitchy, right? Not a bite. My friend Billy figured out, like, he started burning it, like I told you, 5 feet burn and then pause for like 2 seconds. As soon as we started doing that, as soon as I set down what I thought I knew and what I thought the fish wanted, we had 50 fish a day. It was insane. Like, we'd burn it as fast as you can and kill it and let it sit there for 2 seconds and then do it again. I've never fished any bait that way before, but you set your pride aside, you try something new, you listen to the fish, and you figure out this bite, and then the whole rest of the trip, that's all we did. It was crazy. So it's like, even when you know a bait, like, you still got to be willing to be open to different stuff.
Imagine having an underwater camera like on a tree limb, and you can see that bait come by and pause, and all of a sudden the bass. That'd be viral footage right there.
It was crazy. Like, you'd have slack line waiting for your bait, just watching, pausing like this, and it'd go boom, and they would just smoke it. It was so fun.
How many of them pushed it at you so your line's slack, and all of a sudden it's like uber slack, and you're like, uh-oh, I know
that is. You're like, no, I got bit off, and then you're like, oh, he's on there.
Oh man, that's like, I love a square bill bite when they do the exact same, right? You pause it and all of a sudden you're just like, oh, I don't feel anything.
Push it towards you.
Yeah, jerks. You never know in the waters we fish either. There's so many pike and toothy critters. It's like,
yeah.
Great.
Well, that's the worst. The swing on air, especially with swim baits, when you like set the hook and there's nothing there and your heart just goes boom.
Or you set the hook and it's just like, whoa. You're like, oh, I know what that is. Got a big old gator on here. So. Well, Kyle, I appreciate your time today. Like I said, everything's going to be linked down below. So I appreciate you coming on the Lure Lab here, part of the Serious Angler Network. But before I let you go, is there anything else you think we should touch on before you head out and go make some more baits?
Not really. I think if you're not following us, give us a follow, because we got some really big stuff coming up, like I said, next spring, and we're very, very excited, and it's going to expand us into this new market and allow us to offer a lot more stuff to people who may be hesitant on expensive swim baits. So give us a follow and be ready for next year.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see it. So
thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate you letting me ramble.
Yeah, of course. Anytime, Kyle, and we'll chat soon. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode here on the Lure Lab, having Kyle on from Throwback Baits, talking swim bait fishing in the fall. Man, it's just something I wish I had way more time to do. And I got a couple free days coming up in the next couple weeks. So I think I'm going to go out and head out and start doing that a little bit. So, but thanks again for tuning in. If you're new here on the YouTube page, please hit that subscribe button. Click all the links down below. Check out all the pages and links to Omnia. Check out Throwback Baits. I don't think you will be disappointed in that one. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform and it allows you to leave a review, please do so. But in the meantime, stay tuned for next week's episode, and we will see you then.